Hey folks, Gavin here from Player TV, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a new graphics card from the guys over at MSI. This is the MSI GTX 1080 Ti Gaming X, which does have a lot of things going for it, such as 11 gigs of GDDR5X VRAM, as well as a, twin Frozen 6 cooler. It's got plenty of connection to designs, and it's a pretty good, all-round good looking card. So, touching on some of the main features and specs, as I've said, it features 11 gig of GDDR5X VRAM. It also has, as I've said, repeating myself again, it has the twin Frozen 6 cooler, which does have a twin fan design. This cooler also does feature RGB, although it's not exactly well implemented, but I'll talk more about that later. It has obviously a decent, speed. It's got a core clock of 1544 megahertz on the core. Obviously it boosts higher, 1687 megahertz, as well as having 11 gigahertz clock on the memory, which is very high, very good. And obviously this is based off NVIDIA's latest Pascal architecture. It features a fully customized PCB, as well as a length of around 11.4, just actually over 11.4 inches in length. So it is quite a long card. It's not really suitable if you've got a small ITX system, although make sure you have, if you have got room, make sure you have got ample airflow throughout your case. It features two 8-pin power connectors, which the card itself has a power consumption of 250 watts. So MSI actually recommend a power supply of 600 watts or greater, although you will probably be fine with a very well branded, bronze, silver, or 80 platinum 80 plus 500 plus one, depending on your CPU, of course. I do need to mention that this card is VR ready, and it supports obviously NVIDIA's VRWorks technology. Depending obviously if you're into that kind of thing. I'm not really a big fan of VR, but there are a lot of people who are and will appreciate the fact and compatibility with VR's functions, features, and obviously the hardware like the headsets like the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift, etc. The card sports a very nice looking black metal backplate. It does have MSI's Gaming Dragon logo embedded onto it, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And I'm a really big fan of cards with backplates, especially if you're going to be spending this much on a card. It has actually sort of been like printed on. Ignore this bit, fucking Ash, please ignore it. Like all NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti's, it features a 352-bit memory bus, so the 11 gig of GDDR5X has got plenty of room, leg room to handle it. It has 3,584 stream processors as well. These are generally known as CUDA cores on NVIDIA cards. Obviously more people will probably know them as CUDA, but meh. Connections wise, the card has two DisplayPort 1.4 full-size connectors. It has two HDMI 2.0 connectors, and it also has a DVI-D port as well. So we've seen the new MSI GTX 1080 Ti Gaming X. We've seen what it looks like. We've seen, what it's about in terms of style and specs. But does it have the performance to back it up? Let's find out now, and then I'll get back to you with my analysis. So, what's my verdict on the MSI GTX 1080 Ti Gaming X? Well, it's obviously a very beautiful looking card. It's very monstrous in terms of performance, and if you are looking at a GTX 1080 Ti or any of the aftermarket models such as this one or the ASUS, the EVG, the Gigabyte versions, The one thing to know is the price wise they are expensive. You know, you do pay through the nose to get the performance that's on offer. Now in my opinion, this is the first GTX 1080 Ti we've taken a look at, and in terms of performance, this is probably, in my opinion, the first stable 4K 60 frame card on the market, as well as a good 1080p card for 144 Hertz. So people wanting to play AAA rated games at good settings, 144 frames per second plus for that 1080p and explosive frame rate performance, then this is the kind of card that you want, and a GTX 1080 Ti is pretty much your only option other than the Titan X Pascal, which is obviously a lot more money. In terms of VRAM, it's got plenty of that, so there's no problems at all with resolutions. One thing I will say in terms of performance, the game performance was absolutely brilliant. It was actually slightly higher in my testing than the ASUS STRIX model, even though the STRIX is slightly higher clock speeds. Very, very minute difference in clock speeds anyway, so it was going to be neck and neck anyway. But the cooling performance, in my opinion, does slightly lag behind. Well, when I say slightly, 9 degrees or so isn't a small jump, and in terms of audio difference between them, in terms of the cooler noise, then there wasn't much difference at all, and they weren't really audible at full load anyway, in our testing, which was, you know, pretty good. You don't want a loud card in your system, but then again, if you wear a headset or headphones, I don't know why I did the phone sign, but
ring 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 banana phone,
you're not going to notice it anyway. In terms of, you know, pricing, the MSI model is around £40 to £50 cheaper than the ASUS model. Now that is massive in terms of, especially when it comes to my buying purchase criteria. The card performs well, although it's not as cool as the ASUS model, it still performs amply. It's still well under the thermal throttling limit, in my opinion. And one thing to note as well is, you know, if you're gonna, that £40 to £50 difference can be the difference between a 128 gig SSD and a 256 gig SSD, which means more games, more storage, and a better overall system. But yeah, if you're not too fussed about having the coolest card on the market and you want one that looks good, and you know, you don't want to pay over the odds. I mean, you're paying the performance tax anyway with the GTX 1080 Ti's, but it's nice to see MSI's not so stringent on the pricing in the UK. In the US, however, it is a little more expensive than pretty much all the other cards, apart from the ASUS models. The MSI in the UK is generally better value, but in the US it isn't. So yeah, in terms of awards, there's only really one award that this card's going to get, and this is gold. Gold because it performs well, it's got a good price, for a GTX 1080 Ti that is, and you know, in terms of, you know, acoustic performance, in terms of sound, in terms of temperature performance, it's still, in my opinion, well within the right range that I would expect for a card of this caliber. The only major caveat that I've got with this card is you do get a little bit of RGB on the front here, but you've got a red shroud, so that makes absolutely no sense to me. And I mean, the only way to get rid of the red shroud is obviously by modding it, and that would void the warranty. So it'd be nice if this was, you know, detachable. You know, you could maybe 3D print parts like you do get a lot on the ASUS models, ASUS products. But who knows in the future, see how MSI get on with that. But yeah, thanks for watching today's review. I've been Gavin from Player TV. Thanks for watching, folks, and ciao for now. Bum, 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 bum.